Start recording. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we are about to code a complete game live on stream. But we just spent a bunch of time coming back from RSI break and trying to see if we could switch to 4coder, which is a new editor being developed by Alan Webster, one of the people who's on the chat. You'd see him as Mr. Fourth Dimension. And I think we have now gotten essentially like a baseline of the Emacs functionality that we needed. And there's a couple things that we don't really have or that don't quite work yet in our sort of custom code that we did for it, but we're pretty darn close. So today, we are basically going to do a flight check where we try to do some programming. And we won't do it on Handmade Hero directly. We'll just do it on like a little test project or something. We'll try to do some programming, and we'll see if we hit any major showstoppers, right? We'll see if there's anything that we just can't deal with. I think there's probably one that is a showstopper, and I haven't quite figured out how to work around it yet. And that is just that since we're in a modal state, the way we did our key bindings where they were modal, we don't have any way of indicating what mode you're in, and it is pretty darn tough to work with a modal editor that has literally no indication of whether you're in the mode or not. It's pretty tough. You can do it, but it's pretty rough. And so that may be kind of tough, and we may need to hack something. I don't know exactly how, but we may need to hack something so that we can indicate to ourselves whether we're in a mode or not. And so there's that. Other than that, I don't actually know if there's anything stopping us at this point. Like I said, some of our features are a little rough, and we're missing two things, iMenu and macros. iMenu we could actually implement ourselves now. I just don't know if we want to go ahead and actually do that or not. And then macros we can't do ourselves, so that's something we have to live without. Other than that, I think we've basically rebuilt 100% of the things that we actually wanted to do in Emacs for the most part. We even built a quick calc, although we didn't quite finish. So we could even spend a little time on that and get a fully featured calculator thing just like Emacs had, because we were pretty close on that as well. So yeah, it's, we're right on the cusp. So I don't really know what's going to happen. We're just going to give it a shot, and we're going to see what happens. And we're just going to spend today trying that and tuning anything that we can tune. That's about it. That's what we're going to try to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started up here. Let me see if I can do that. Adjust my seat here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 4coder, and I'm going to just. I noticed one thing that it does is if you start it, it's actually a console mode application, it would seem. So yeah, sometimes if you start it from here, what you probably want to do is actually run it with the start command so that you get your command line back, if that makes sense, right? Because if you have a console app and you don't want to have it lock up the console and use that for its output, you can do a start command and then you get this, right? So that's kind of handy. Anyway, so here is our 4coder window. We have a function that basically loads all of Handmade, and we got that in there. And I believe we even got this going here where we could do a make, and we can even jump to the first error, and in theory it sort of works. But we sort of had some weird issues, and I don't really know why we have those issues. But when we do a jump to error, it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't work. And I don't actually know what the specific problem is with that. I'm just not sure. So we gotta kind of get that working a little bit better, and so there's that. And then we also have to, like I said, just kind of go through and maybe figure out some way we can hack it to have the mode be something that's more demonstrative, if that makes sense. So yeah. All right, so given that that's the situation that we're in, I'm thinking that roughly what I would do here is say, let me just debug the things that I have first, and then we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. And I guess there's really no reason for me not to do this in 4coder itself, other than I can't really build a 4coder extension in 4coder. I'm not sure how to get around that. I guess at some point 4coder is going to need to have ability to hot load its extensions, because that way, I mean, otherwise you can't use 4coder to build 4coder extensions. I guess you could use another instance of 4coder to test them or something like that. So yeah, I'm not sure. That part, again, not super essential, but somewhere down the line, someone has to figure out how to make that happen, right? So yeah, so we have our go-to error stuff here. Excuse me. And for some reason, this active view to line thing, the switch to or load file and active view to line, for some reason this doesn't seem to actually be working. And I don't know if that's maybe something to do with like the fact that I don't yet have like, is it because there's not enough time in between the two things happening? Like, does the switch to or load file happen sort of in the background or something? I really don't know. I don't even know what active view to line even is, and maybe I should look, because if it's just getting called like that, I feel like that means it must be in here, right? Active view to line. Let's see, active view to line. Maybe not. I don't know where that's defined. There it is. So that calls get active file view, and then it says view set cursor. So honestly, I don't know I don't think that's what I actually want, to be honest. I think what I want to do instead is something more like this. I think I probably want to do this directly. And when I do switch to or load file, I probably want switch to or load file to return to me the view somehow or something like this, right? So when I do switch to or load file, because it's already going to get this view, you know, and that's the view that I want to use. Now, of course, if it's already getting the active file view like that, you would think that this would just work to do so outside, but I guess I don't know. So yeah, hard to say. I also don't know what view set cursor, what that other parameter is. I would like to know what that is, because maybe that's a clue to why it's not working. Or maybe we have some other bug as well, right? We don't really know. That could certainly be plausible. Set preferred X. So set preferred X, we don't really care about that. That's just what column I guess we'd be on. Anyway, so if we called this ourselves and we don't really need to do that, we could also make sort of this switch to or load file situation return that at some point. But it looks like since it's just calling directly, I guess no matter what we do, we're always getting the view from the active view anyway. So I guess it's kind of a no-op, unfortunately. But what are you going to do? So yeah, so I don't really know why we're having trouble with that. I guess what I could do is, I don't know if our printfs are coming out at all, but what I could do is do a printf here that just sort of prints out specifically what's going on. So I could say like jump to, you know, this line, this or whatever, just so we could kind of see what it's actually saying. And I feel like, I guess since I don't really want to print more than the size of the file name thing there, excuse me, I guess I really don't want to print that. I'll just do jump to line so we can see what the line number is. But I believe that should probably work, right? I mean, I feel like it probably would. I don't really know. So yeah, getting a little tangled up here. There we go. So let's see. I want this to come a little forward. There we go. So let's see. If I am going to call this from here, we've built this already, and I do this guy, and I load, and then I build. When I do jump, so I'm not getting a printout there at all, right? So I think maybe that's not a possibility for how we actually can do printing out. Maybe there's some kind of console redirection stuff happening, but for whatever reason, we're not actually allowed to do that for the DLL, which is fine. So what I could do instead is I probably could do something like an output debug string here. I would think. I don't actually know. I'm not sure how this is being linked. Let's find out. So if I just do a pound include windows.h, does that just work? It does. All right. So if I do that, now what I should be able to do, I guess we don't still have it open anymore, but I can open up MSDev. I can access 4coder like so, and then I can run it. And now, when I build and I do a jump, in theory, I should see output, and I do. So now at least we have a way to output something that we can see so that we can maybe get some debug information out to where we need it to go. So what I can do here is I could say, there's some temps thing here, and I can do a sprintf, and I can just say jump to %d, and there's the line number, and then we'll output that as the debug string, and then we can see what it actually does. So here we are. There's the make, there's the there's the make, the load and the make, and then we go to there. So that definitely tried to jump to 22. So we at least know for sure that we're trying to jump to the right line number, but 4coder doesn't seem to want to actually go to that line number. And we don't know why that is. And I wonder if there's anything particular about the way we're switching the buffer that makes that not work, and I don't know why that would be the case. But you can see here that we do a view set buffer, right? And we do that on the active file view. And so presumably it's doing this, it's making this call, because the buffer will exist. And when it calls usetBuffer, then it thinks that it actually did switch. We know that we come back in here, we re-get the file view summary, and then we try to seek, and the seek doesn't work. That's what we know. So I'm not sure. Maybe Mr. Fourth Dimension can give us a clue on why that is, although I don't actually know if he's watching the chat or not. That's a good question, because sometimes he's on the chat, sometimes he's not on the chat. But if he is, then maybe he can tell us. So that does seem to be a problem, because without accurate being able to go to a line, we would have a problem. Now, what I could also do is see if this occurs anywhere else. When I do that first goto, right? If I was to do a goto here, where it's going to do goto line, right? If I type 22 and hit return, that's obviously going to the correct line. So if I do a make, and then I do a goto, let's see. Yeah. So that time it worked. So it's very it seems very unpredictable. It seems almost, so here's what it seems like, and I could be wrong. It seems like if you switch buffers, it does not work, but if you don't switch buffers, then it does. That's what it seems like to me. Because if you watch, right, if I make, and I'm in this buffer, and I hit N, right? Oh, well, nope, that worked just fine. And maybe not. I don't know. I am at a bit of a loss there. I have no idea why that's happening. So let's say I switch both of these away. So neither of them are on it. I do a build. I hit N. It goes right there. That seems to work just fine. I hit M. It goes right there. So I don't know. Is it just the first time or something? If it's just the first time, then we don't care. That's a bug that needs fixing at some point, but not one that we would really care about. So it looks like that just doesn't work that first time, right? But then from then on, it does. So the first time we tried to jump, no luck. Second time, no problem. And it looks like every time thereafter, it works just fine. It would seem to me. So yeah, I don't know. It does also look like it does something weird where if I jump to a, like if I build, I jump to a line, right? That's correct. That's line 22. If I jump to line 22 again, it scrolled the buffer like from the bottom all the way back to the top. So it looks like there's some kind of bug there because that jump actually jumped to the same line. It was 2 jumps to 22 in a row. Here's another jump to 22, and it does that whole scrolling thing. So it looks like it looks like this function is a little busted. View set cursor. Not exactly a showstopper, but definitely a bug of some kind. I should put that up here. Cursor setting seems to do no movement first time, and then weird scrolling behavior on jump to same line subsequently. So that's about it for that. Again, I don't think there's anything else to debug. I think it's basically working. So I'm fine with that. There's plenty more. It's super bad. It's like really lousy. But, you know, that's not really a problem. What I will say is we probably don't need it to jump to the same line multiple times. So what we could also do is say, oh, okay, like the static int last jump line, or error parsing last jump line equals 0. I don't know why I do equals 0 on statics. They're obviously already going to be equals 0. Excuse me. But when we do our error parsing position thing, we would just say last jump line equals 0. And so then what we would say is, well, every time we're going to go do this, right, and we do this sort of switch to file, blah, blah, blah situation, what we would also want to do is say, well, if we already are on that file, right, and that line, then we don't actually need to do it again, right? And so actually, I suppose the best way to do that, we also kind of need to know what the file name is the only thing about that. So, I'm not sure what the best way is to do that, but I guess what we could do is, again, just copy it up here. Or I guess we just use buffer ID. That's the right thing to do, now that I think about it, because we just want to know if it's the right buffer ID. So that would be in 4coder custom buffer ID. Is it just an integer? It's just an integer. Int error parsing last buffer ID. Error parsing last buffer ID equals 0. And so then when we do error parsing position and do all this nonsense here, then what I can do is say, okay, whenever we do a jump, I'm going to say that the error parsing last buffer ID is going to be equal to whatever the buffer is that we actually jumped to, right? Which actually means that the switch to or load file situation, I really want the switch to or load file to return me more stuff. I just feel like that's a better situation because I need this thing to give me more information. So switch to or load file, instead of switch to or load file, what I want that to do is probably return me more than just a bool. So switch to result or something like that. I want that to be, you know, a success, and then I want that to have this. Like, I want that. I need this information. So when it gets it, it should give it back to me. So if I do switch to result, and that's the result, then I'll start off with it in the null state. I will then go ahead and just write down the fact that these guys were who they were, and then everything can flow as normal. And when I return, instead of doing that, I will just do this. And I guess that's result. I can call that switched, so that stays the same. All right. So let's see. Result dot switched. Oops. Bool switched. So there we go. And now everywhere I call switch to or load file, I really want to just do .switched if the person didn't care. And then anywhere else that I do it, like here, I can call switch to result. And then now I can say, well, okay, if I actually switched, then I don't need to do this anymore, because I know that whatever it actually did for the switch, that's the view that I actually wanted, right? And then I know that what the buffer ID was, or whatever it is, right? Buffer ID. I'm not. I don't really know what that is. What did I call it? I called it, okay, lowercase buffer. All right. So when this thing does that, what it also needs to do, presumably, is if it does a set buffer, then if the buffer doesn't exist, then after it does the switch, I want to basically recapture that buffer, right? So after it does this thing where it does interactive open, I want to recapture the buffer here so I can say like, oh, you know, like, I guess I'd say get active buffer maybe. Can you do that? Or just, I guess it's whatever that view should be. Interactive open should have opened it in the view that I'm in. Although actually I could probably just do it this way, because now I know that it's been filled, so I just have to do that. And maybe I can assert here that the buffer exists because it has to have existed at this point, although, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, point being, that should be correct now. And now I can say that whatever the line number I jumped to and whatever the buffer ID was that I used, I can take those two and save them. And so in the future, whenever I do a jump, I can say that if I was going to jump to the same place that I'm already at, don't do that, right? So basically, like, if line number is not equal to error parsing last jump line, or buffer ID, whatever the buffer ID would have been, and I guess I still need to do this, I guess, right? I don't really want to have to do that. I just kind of want to know what the buffer actually is. I suppose that probably I factored that stuff in a slightly wrong way, because what I want to do is get the buffer here by name, and if they're equal, then keep going. But I guess for the sake of just, you know, since this is kind of hacky code that we're just using as placeholders until Alan does real versions of these things, I guess I can still do it this way. So I could say, all right, we'll do the jump. I'll just put it here. So we'll say it'll do the jump, but it'll keep on doing the parsing unless we detect that we actually should stop. So here we'll say if the line number is not equal to error parsing jump line, or the switch buffer ID is not equal to the error parsing last buffer ID. If either of them aren't equal, then we know we jumped to a legit new line, so we can stop, is what I'm thinking. Hopefully that makes some sense. Okay, switch to result. There we go. Local variable is initial. Yep, that's not good right there. That's supposed to be result buffer. There we go. Thank you, compiler. That was a good catch. All right, so if we load now, and then we make, which we just did, we jump to the first line. In theory, that does not look like it's working. That looks like we're still going. A little too far. So let's try that again. if the line number is not equal to error parsing last jump line, or the switch to buffer ID, if either of those two things are not true, just got to move that out. There we go. Okay. Much better. Okay. So let's try again. Let's just do our load, our build, and there's our jump. So we jumped to 22. The next jump, still jump to 22. That is not fabulous. Not fabulous at all. So now what is the problem? Let's see. So we're storing these correctly. We store the jump line as the line number we tried to jump to. We store the buffer ID as the buffer ID. If we I guess really I could just put those in here, right? That seems reasonable. But anyway, why did that still stop? Why did we get a stop on that? I don't really understand. Because the line number should have been equal, right? It should have been 22. And the buffer ID should also have been equal because the buffer is not changing at all. So I feel like that should be reasonable. Maybe this is just me being rusty since we haven't programmed on stream much. But I'm not sure what the problem is there. Load, build, jump. There's jump to 22. And it jumps to 22 again. I'm going to have to step into there and see why it's jumping to 22 again. Because, right, it should come through here and say, well, the line number we've got was 22. Right, and it's only reset up here. So the line number you got was 22, and that should have been equal to jump last line. And similarly, the buffer ID should have been equal to the parsing last buffer ID, right? So I don't really see what the idea is there. I will say we should move this down a bit though. So basically like there. All right, I'm gonna just step in and see. I don't have any better ideas. Oh, did I not rebuild? That may have been it, because I may have still had 4coder open. I don't think so, though. Okay, so I'm assuming we still have the bug. Jump to 22. Jump to 22, 24. That's real weird. All right, that is some very strange stuff, to say the very least. And I am not exactly sure what it is doing. Because it should never be able to do what it just did, right? So let's go ahead and step into that and see. All right, so we jumped to 22, and now we assume that we know what those things are set to. So now I'm just going to break at Casey, go to next error. Right, so I'm just going to break in this function. So now I hit it, here we are, and we come in here, and let's see what is our error parsing region, or position rather. 71, so that seems reasonable. Our jump line was 22, our buffer ID was 0. I wonder if that's sensical or not. But anyway, the line itself should be enough here, but we'll see. So when we come back in here and we find out what's going on, we have a file name. We do our switch with our set cursor. We've got a line number, it's 22. We've got a buffer ID is 42. Our last buffer ID seems to have been set to 0 for some reason. So that would explain why we're doing it again. So maybe we're not our buffer when it actually does the switch. I wonder if this has something to do with why it doesn't work the first time as well. Let's see what happens even from the very first time. That seems like a good idea to me. So here we go, and I'm going to switch here, do the jump, and let's take a look at what happens when we do switch to reload file. So here we go. We ask what the buffer is. So the buffer, when we try to get it, there isn't one. And that makes sense because it hasn't been loaded yet, right? So we call interactive open, and we see whether or not we got the buffer here, right? And so let's take a look. So that almost certainly is what the problem is. This must be delayed. Like, this must not be happening in time to actually get us the results. That's got to be what it is. That's got to be it, right? And so then when we come through here, our buffer is equal to 0, which means that's why we're getting a double jump to 22, right? So I think that's also not our fault. So we do this a second time. The line number would have matched, but now the buffer ID is actually legit. It's buffer ID 42. And so now we jump again to 22. So now let's see what happens this next time through. Let's see what we end up with. So our line number is 22 again, and our buffer ID is 42, which is what we expect. So we skip that guy, which is exactly what we want. So then we come through again. We go to the next one, and let's see what happens there. When we go through to the next one, when we do our switch, line number 24 is next. The buffer ID is still 42, so this should enter. We store the two, the 24 and the 42, so that's great. We move forwards exactly how much I think that we should have, so that's actually fine as well. And then we print it out. Yeah, so that seems pretty good. Let's go one more time. So we get the line number of 24 again, which is not a valid one because the same as the previous one. Now we get 372 is our next error, and we see that the buffer ID. Okay, so basically that I think it's all working properly now. The only problem that we have, and let's even just verify that. Now I even know why we're getting that weird number there. So if we take a look at what happens in the compilation buffer, I'm assuming that it actually is interleaved numerically there, right? So if we take a look up at the top here, and well, you know what, it'd be a little easier if we had more room. So if we take a look at what happened here, I think it's trying to jump to this, right? And when it's trying to jump to this guy, it's again getting 0 as the buffer because it's after the switch. It comes back as 0. That buffer ID comes back as 0 the first time. So I think we're now working properly. There's just some 4coder things happening that we don't understand that are preventing us from it being completely smooth. But now I think it's roughly okay. I mean, it's not good, don't get me wrong. And we probably should trim white space here, because if we want to be able to jump to these, we got to trim white space, because these are kind of like indented. So I don't know if 4coder handles that. If we say, hey, open this file and there's white space at the beginning, it might get confused. So what we might want to do in addition, so that you can jump to sort of noted errors like that, we could probably do something like that. And we could even do something, now that I'm in control of the parsing, I never had this ability in Emacs, but what we could do is if there is white space there, we could treat that as a sub error and open up both of those two things at the same time or something like that in some kind of a view. Like, we could do better stuff there eventually for that single error. So yeah, but what I want to do here is say, okay, it seeks to the end of the line, and then after this, it should do eat all white space, basically. So while is white space star seek plus seek. So that I think is a good thing to do there. And again, that will fix if there was a bug because we were passing it something with some, the wrong thing in there, that would work. So let's see what happens if we do that. Let's go ahead and load up, load, build, build, and forwards. So first time jump, we know that doesn't work. Next time it should work. Then we jump to handmade.h. So again, same problem here. I think when we switch, the jump doesn't execute, unfortunately, and I think that's probably because the buffer ID is set to 0 until some kind of a thread or something completes. And so probably what's happening is the jump, set the cursor point or something is getting thwarted by that same latency inside 4coder. But after that, we're pretty much good to go, right? So that's working swell. So I think we're good to go. Yeah. So I'm reasonably happy with that. I think I can work with that. I don't care about go to previous error right now. It'd be pretty easy for us to implement, but I don't think I even need that. So we'll just leave that. And then the only thing that we're kind of missing here is iMenu. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and see if we can make this a little bit cleaner, because I don't quite like the way that it's working in terms of just what's shown on what side of the screen and that sort of stuff. So the way that I have it do in Emacs, right, is if I load up everything here and I build, when I build, I want it to bounce back to the buffer that I was already in. So I want it to run the build and come back. I don't want the cursor over in that, over here, right? That's not what I wanted. So I want to do that. And the other thing that I want to do is I want to set the cursor position in the compilation buffer as well. So that's just going to be a little more code here to just get that working a little bit more smoothly. All right, so when we do KC save and make without asking, when I do that build, what I would like to do here is when it does first parameter and does this thing here, what I want it to do is I want it to build in a different window, which I believe it already was doing, right? So if I switch over here and I build, it's already switching to a different window to build. So that's fine. I don't know why it's switching. Maybe because, you know what, I don't know why it's switching. I have no idea why it's switching, but it's switching. All right, so it's switching over. After it switches over, what I want to do is I want to just do an exec command to change back, right? So I want to do command ID change active panel, okay? And so if I do change active panel, then I should get that behavior back. That's the same as index. You notice in Emacs, that's how that works, right? So here we are. I do the load, I do the make, and you can see that I'm still in this window, which is what I want. And that way, when I do the n, I'm still here, and I'm always nning around. So that, I think, totally fixes that problem. I don't think we need to do anything else there. The other thing I need to do is be able to see the error. You can see this doesn't go to where the error actually is. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to get that global, sort of this compilation buffer, right? I have it here. What I want to do is say if I'm viewing that somewhere, I want to move the cursor in there to wherever it should be. Now, I don't really know how to do that exactly because it's a view set cursor, and this was a thing that we had trouble with before. I don't know if Alan's listening, but I don't understand necessarily how to get the views from the buffers. I can get from a view to a buffer. I can say what buffer is this view viewing, right? Like that bug notwithstanding, which was kind of like giving us the wrong one back or whatever, that was just a bug. Normally, everywhere else, we just get it, right? So that seems to work pretty much directly. What I don't know is if I have a buffer ID, I don't know how to say, is anyone viewing this? And so what I'm wondering is there a way for me to loop over what the views are or something so that I could try to find out who, if there is somebody who's viewing viewing the thing. And it looks like maybe this this is our ticket to greatness. So maybe what we do here, right, is we just look and see, look at the views, and if any of those views have our buffer in it, off we go, right? So that seems like a good idea. I think that's what I want. So I'm just going to do that. Maybe that's a dumb idea, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say something like, and let me look at what this actually is first. I'm going to say something like get file view. I assume that takes an index. Let's take a look. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to do how many are there, and then I'll just loop through them. So yeah, seems like that's pretty easy. So all right, inline, what is that thing? It's called a file view summary, and get first view. I probably should be using 4coder style here, because if he's ever gonna want to merge any of these changes or anything, I probably shouldn't be doing it the wrong way. All right, so let's do it the other way. So get file view from buffer, or get first file view for buffer. So if I just want to find out, is anyone looking at this thing? Yeah, is anyone looking at this particular buffer ID? So I pass it a buffer ID, and all I have to do now is say, oh, and it needs that app thing. I don't remember what that guy is. Application links, context, I guess. I think it's that. Maybe. So I think what I can do here is just call view max index. And that probably takes one of these. So I can say like view count for int view index equals 0, view index less than view count plus view index, oops, view index. And then I can say get file view, and that file view summary result. I can just say give me that one back, please. And oops, that wouldn't be result. File view summary test. And so we'll just say, oh, yeah, give me that one, whatever that one is. And if that one happens to be viewing the buffer ID that I wanted, then it's the one that we want to return, and so return it. Seems pretty straightforward. Otherwise, return the null thing or whatever. So that seems pretty good. And so that way I can say like, oh, hey, I want to know what view is viewing this buffer. And there could be more than one, but I don't care. As long as there's one, then that's the one I'll use, because I don't need to move, like if there were two compilation views, I don't need to move both of them. I just need to move one of them so I can read the error, right? And again, I wouldn't even need to do this if we had a status display, so eventually there might be a status display and we could get rid of this as well. But for now, I might as well do it. So what I want to do here is say, okay, if we actually did jump to a line, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call that function I just wrote, which is get first file view for buffer. It's going to give me back, you know, one of these file view things, and this is the compilation buffer. And I already know what the buffer ID is because it's right up here. You know what I'm saying? So there's the buffer ID, and what I can do once I have that is say if compilation buffer exists, or compilation view, sorry. Compilation view exists, maybe? If the compilation view exists, then I just need to do the view set cursor on this thing, right? On the compilation view. And I don't know what this means. I have no idea. But I think I can just say error parsing. I don't know. Maybe I can say error parsing position. Well, it's actually not quite error parsing position, right? It's actually just, I want the beginning of that line. Well, I actually don't care. So that might be right. I don't know if it's probably wrong. Let's be honest with ourselves, it's probably wrong. From int to buffer seek. All right, so what's a buffer seek? So why don't someone tell me what a buffer seek is? Because I ain't got no idea. I don't know where that is. Seek line care. Is that defined somewhere here? Seek line care. Buffer seek results. So it's basically some kind of a thing. So it looks like it looks like if I just do seek pause, that will wrap this in whatever it needs to be for him to know what I was trying to do. So I think if I just do that, probably okay. Don't really know. We'll find out. All right, so if we run 4coder here, there's my load, there's my build, and I hit next error, and there we go. So that put the thing right on the error, which is exactly what I wanted. Look at that. Look at that. Sweet. So sweet. Look at that. Look at how sweet that is. Of course, when I get to the end, I probably should print out the fact that we got to the end, but that is just nice. That is just some nice stuff right there. I'm pretty happy about that. So that's all good. I guess we can get rid of this now because we're pretty sure that we don't have any problems at the moment. So that's all good. And go to previous error would just do the search in the reverse direction, I guess. Which I don't really feel like implementing. So I feel like that's just going to sit. So is that it? I don't know. Let's find out. So let's pretend we were going to be coding on Handmade Hero right now. And let's just see what happens. So I load everything up. I build. Of course, I don't know what mode I'm in. That's still a problem. I go here. I'm like, oh, okay, that's busted. So it looks like that. So that's something that I need to fix as well. Let me make a note of these. So kill line needs to eat new line. That's not working currently. So that's a bit of a problem. Let's see. Delete looks like it's going the wrong way to me. So I think I do. I have my deletes bound backwards, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and take care of that right now. So my modal keys, I bound like delete and backspace to the opposite ones that they are. So my modal backspace is supposed to delete a token to the left, obviously. If I thought about that for 10 seconds, I know that. And this is supposed to delete a token to the right. So that was just dumb. So that's gone. All right, so that's good. And let's see here, if I do an M, we make that, yeah. So that, I also guess I want, yeah, think about that. That'd be a nice improvement. Everything else seems reasonable. Let's see what happens if I try to write some code here. So I'm not sure what code I would necessarily be writing, but if I was going to write some code here, let's say I want to do something in output playing sounds. So I say for int sound index equals 0, sound index is less than 5, plus plus sound index. I feel like I'm missing keys. So I feel like there's some kind of a bug in there at the moment. I feel like there's a bug in there at the moment where, like, if I'm typing, yeah, I definitely, okay, so that's the problem. I see what the problem is. So if I have the shift key down, when I hit the space bar, yeah. So I guess if I just bound shift space to be space, that would solve the problem. That appears to be most of it. Okay, so if I build, that'll give me an error and I can jump there, yeah. Okay, so couple things to do. Just got to fix the control K and then bind space, shift space to be the same as space, basically. So let's see, modifier, so space, modal space, modifier shift. That seems to be important. All right, so where I do my kill line-ness, kill to end of line. So this guy, I need to do something a little more sophisticated, which is that if the range that I would have been killing isn't there, then I need to kill the new line as well. So I don't know exactly how new lines work per se. So I'm not sure exactly what needs to happen there. But basically this, it has to be custom coded, right? So in here, and I guess I could maybe do something fancier, but basically what I need to do is say, okay, do the seek to end of line thing and do the deletion like you would have done, right? But if the range, I think all I really need to do is say, if the range that you were going to be deleted, you know, if pos1 equals pos2, then the range max, I just want to add 1 to it so it kills the new line. I think that's really all I need, if that makes sense. I think so. And I'm going to put it to do up here. Am I going to put it? I'm going to. Well, maybe not. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, so let's run this again. Let's go ahead and load everything. Let's build. Let's go down here to the error. And now can I do my kill? Yes. Perfect. So now that's exactly like what I had in Emacs, which is what I wanted. So I think we're good. We could start programming with this, I feel like. What's in here? Should also say need a way to set the theme from the custom config file so I don't have to pick it every time. And I probably also want note important to do highlighting ability to customize whatever. Because I noticed that was missing. Okay. So let's see. If we were pretending, I don't know what our next thing to code would be. I think we were going to have to do proper texture downloads. I think is probably what our next thing to do is. But, so if I was to start this off, say let's set Handmade Hero, that'd be the first thing I would presumably do. And then we would load Handmade Hero. We would build Handmade Hero. We don't have any bugs. I would switch to OpenGL, and we take a look at this. And here we are in the OpenGL code. And here's our bitmap stuff. And you can see that it's total garbage, right? That it just does a bind texture every time, which is totally not what we want it to do for obvious reasons. So we'd just go in here and we'd start monkeying with that. You know, I don't know exactly what we would say, but we'd figure something out. And yeah, I mean, I feel like this is very usable. I feel like maybe I want to change my up and down movement. I think it's not quite the same as what I have it as in Emacs, which is, I think what I did is page up, page down in edit mode actually is this jump, and this still moved by, like, up and down were always up and down. I think. That's just my recollection. So I think I might change that one as well. I'm feeling pretty good about this, though. I mean, I think we're there. I think we can try doing some coding tomorrow, and we'll just see what happens. I mean, I don't use, like I said, I don't use that much else. The modal thing, not being able to see the mode is really that's the only bad thing. Maybe we can bribe Alan to add something, like just the cursor, change the command to change the cursor color, like something like that. That's the only thing that's going to be really tough, because like looking at this, it's really hard to know what mode it's in, and then you accidentally do something and you're like, ah. But, you know, I don't know. We're real close. I guess, or maybe a command to change the color of this thing too. I don't know. Just something. Something would work, I think. Do love that smooth scrolling. Makes me feel like using Cygnus Ed again. You know? Very satisfying. So yeah, I think I am just going to do the last thing I'll do there is I'm just going to rebind. Excuse me. I'm going to rebind those because I'm pretty sure that's the way I have them at the office now in Emacs. So I'm going to go ahead and rebind those keys and see how it goes. So if I did that, what would I do there? That would be in the modal controls for up and down. So it's actually always move up. So that's actually becomes non-modal. And then it's this that's actually modal. So now when you switch into this mode, you actually seek sort of more directly. And I don't know if that's smart or those should be flipped. Like I can't, this is one of those problems when you know, I've never used a modal config like my whole life. And so I just don't know what the smart thing is to do. I think that's probably good, but I don't know. Maybe you want page up and page down to be what you have in edit mode. So I don't know. Maybe we'll just try it this way. Maybe we'll try it. And this is backwards from what I have at work, but I'm going to switch to this config with 4coder at work too. So whichever one prevails, we can just swap, I suppose. So I think that's it for 4coder. I think like this is now, I may just switch to this at work now too, because I think we're pretty good to go. I don't think there's anything that I'm missing, and I could take some time at work to write an iMenu now as well, potentially. All right. So yeah, if we're doing that, and now I go and do my build again, and maybe we'll switch to OpenGL like I did before. And so page up, page down. Well, but that's the way that I was. Well, I don't know. I think we're good. All right, so let's go ahead and close this guy. Close all this down. I guess I can now just look at 4ed. Also, I can look at 4ed with 4ed. So if I want to look at 4coder Casey, I just can. Let me search forwards for what is that thing. You know what I would I wanted to check this out too. Let me just see. Okay, cool. So yeah, modal page up. Modal page up. So you hit return, escape aborts the search, and return confirms it, looks like. So modal page up, in the mode, it's actually page up, and in Which one is... So this looks backwards from what I said, though. So I'm a little confused. Did I not recompile this or something? I don't understand. So what happened here? If I do a build, and now I do a forehead, so if I do page up, page down, that looks like the opposite of what I bound. Because here I am... Oh, it's just because I... It's just because I don't know what mode I'm in. Duh. Like I just said, yeah. All right. So I think that's it, people. I think that's it. I think we have successfully completed our 4coder switch, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and try switching to that at work too, and we'll just see what happens. Because, hey, you know, I'm really tired of using Emacs. I don't really like using it. I like being able to program my editor in C. That's kind of awesome. And I like how fast 4coder is compared to Emacs, because Emacs is so slow. So slow. So thank you very much, Alan, for doing all the work on that. It's a real pleasure seeing it come together, and yeah, like if it continues to go well over the next few months, we're all going to have a pretty big debt of gratitude to you for producing such a nice thing that we can use to program. It takes some of the suck out of life, and there's a lot of it, not having to use Emacs anymore. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do at this point, but just in case there's anyone new to the stream, if you want to use that editor that we are using, you can go to Alan's Patreon page, and I think it's just $5 a month. Nobody knows what the $10 a month tier is, but I immediately switched to the $10 a month tier. I think I switched to technically more than a $10 a month tier on that, but point being, the $5 a month tier is the one that gets you access to the API that we've been using that you can program. And I have sent the 4coder Casey file to Alan, which he is free to distribute along with his stuff if he wants to. Or hey, he can make that $10, and I don't know why anyone would want it, because it's kind of lame and just does what I want to do. But point being, yeah, we can make that happen as well, and presumably Alan will be doing better versions of the stuff that I've been doing, just sort of to hack in to get them working anyway, at which point we'll switch over to those. But definitely, if you want to play around with 4coder, go check that out, and support a really great editor project, which I think is something that we could all really use. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll just we'll try programming. We'll try programming actual Handmade hero code, and if we hit snafus, we hit snafus. But we'll just give it a try. And it might be a little slow going, because not only are we using a new editor, but don't forget, I'm also much slower on the modal thing now, because I kind of have to train my brain up. It's going to take me probably a few weeks, since I, at work I feel like I'm slower, because I've never used modal before. I was always control and alt kind of person. So it might take us a little while, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. A lot of programmers suffer from RSI, and we're no different. So you got to deal with it. So that's what we're doing. So we'll start up again tomorrow. We'll see how we do. Hopefully we do reasonably. Until then, please have fun coding. If you would like to catch up on the schedule, of course, you can check the tweet bot. But we'll be back here again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Love to see you all here. And maybe we can make some progress tomorrow on our OpenGL code. It's mostly done, but we just have that texture problem. And there's a few little issues, like we want to set RGB on our frame buffer, I think. There's a couple of things we want to do, because we added hardware acceleration to the game, for those of you who missed it, so you can pick between the software render and the hardware render now. But since it's OpenGL, there's a couple extra things we got to do to make sure that all the texture management and stuff actually works correctly. So that's about it. Have fun programming, everyone, and I will see you on the internet. Take it easy.